Donald Trump has confirmed the U.S. would be involved in security guarantees for Ukraine as part of a deal to end the war with Russia. The comments came during a historic meeting involving several European leaders, Ukraine's President Zelensky and Mr. Trump at the White House.
In a dramatic move that could redefine the conflict in Eastern Europe, former President Donald Trump has convened a critical summit with key European leaders at the White House, now explicitly ruling out the deployment of U.S. troops while simultaneously initiating arrangements for a direct meeting between the presidents of Russia and Ukraine. In a significant development regarding the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe, the Trump administration has articulated a clear position on the United States' role in seeking a resolution to the war between Russia and Ukraine. President Donald Trump has explicitly ruled out the deployment of American ground forces to Ukraine as a component of any future security guarantees. This strategic decision was confirmed during a conversation with Fox News on Tuesday, where the president indicated that while troops are off the table, alternative forms of assistance, including potential air support, remain under active consideration. This approach was later reinforced by White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, who stated that providing such air support is indeed an option and a possibility, signaling a flexible yet cautious posture. This policy clarification follows a high-level diplomatic engagement at the White House on Monday, where President Trump convened with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and several key European leaders. The central topic of discussion was the pursuit of a viable and lasting peace to end the hostilities. In a move that underscores a direct and personal involvement in the diplomatic process, President Trump has since initiated arrangements for a pivotal face-to-face meeting between President Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The president detailed these efforts on his Truth Social platform, explaining that after concluding the initial meetings, he contacted President Putin to begin organizing the summit. The plan, as outlined, is for the two leaders to meet first at a location yet to be determined, which would then be followed by a trilateral discussion involving Presidents Putin, Zelensky, and Trump himself. This American stance presents a notable contrast to the preparations of other nations, most notably the United Kingdom, which has reportedly begun plans to deploy its own troops to Ukraine as part of a proposed reassurance force that would be contingent upon the successful brokering of a peace agreement with Russia. Amidst these complex geopolitical maneuvers, President Trump also made a statement that has drawn considerable attention. On Tuesday, he placed a degree of responsibility on Ukraine for the conflict, remarking that the nation was taking on a nation that's 10 times your size. A comment made despite the widely acknowledged fact that Russia enacted the full-scale invasion of its sovereign neighbor. This remark is likely to be scrutinized as diplomatic efforts continue to intensify, with the international community watching closely to see if this newly arranged high-stakes dialogue can forge a path toward de-escalation and a sustainable peace in the region. In a significant development for international diplomacy, Switzerland has formally declared its readiness to serve as the host nation for potential peace talks aimed at resolving the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. The announcement was made by Swiss Foreign Minister Ignazio Cassis during a diplomatic conference held in Bern on Tuesday. Minister Cassis expressed gratitude for the international trust placed in his country, stating, "We are ready for such a meeting, and we are thankful for the trust placed in us." He further emphasized that while Switzerland has consistently signaled its willingness to provide a neutral ground, the realization of such a summit ultimately depends on the agreement and willingness of the major powers involved in the conflict. A particularly complex aspect of hosting talks involves the status of Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is the subject of an international arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court concerning the invasion of Ukraine. Addressing this legal and diplomatic challenge directly, Foreign Minister Cassis clarified that President Putin would be granted immunity should he travel to Switzerland for negotiations. This assurance is grounded in Switzerland's unique position in global affairs. "We have clarified the legal situation," Cassis explained. "We could hold such a meeting, and we know what needs to be done to ensure it goes smoothly." We can do this despite the arrest warrant against Putin because of our special role and Geneva's role as the European headquarters of the UN. This Swiss proposal has already garnered support from several key allied nations, adding momentum to the prospect of talks. Italy's Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani, who was also in Bern, voiced strong support for selecting Geneva as the venue. He told reporters that Geneva could be the right venue for the meeting, adding that Italy is in favor of it taking place in Geneva because it is a country that has always worked for peace building. Similarly, French President Emmanuel Macron explicitly endorsed the Swiss city, stating, "It will be hosted by a neutral country, maybe Switzerland. I'm pushing for Geneva or another country." The diplomatic efforts extend beyond the logistics of a meeting location, encompassing broader humanitarian appeals. In a related development, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney referenced a poignant appeal to President Putin from U.S. First Lady Melania Trump, which focused on the plight of children affected by the war. Prime Minister Carney, speaking after participating in a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and a coalition of allied nations, said his country welcomes the new appeal to President Putin by the First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump, to consider the plight of children in ending this war. This appeal was personally conveyed by President Donald Trump, who passed along a letter from the First Lady to President Putin during their recent summit in Alaska. In her letter, Mrs. Trump penned a heartfelt call for peace, writing, "Yet in today's world, some children are forced to carry a quiet laughter, untouched by the darkness around them, a silent defiance against the forces that can potentially claim their future," and adding, "Mr. Putin, you can single-handedly restore their melodic laughter." Together, these actions represent a multifaceted push toward dialogue, combining neutral venue logistics with powerful humanitarian rhetoric in an attempt to bring the war to an end. In a significant development for international diplomacy, Switzerland has officially confirmed its readiness to grant necessary protections to Russian President Vladimir Putin should he travel to the country for a potential summit on the future of the war in Ukraine. This assurance comes directly from Swiss Foreign Minister Ignacio Casas, who addressed the complex legal situation arising from the arrest warrant issued for President Putin by the International Criminal Court in March 2023. The minister clarified that Switzerland's unique status as a neutral nation and the host of the United Nations European headquarters in Geneva provides a legal foundation to facilitate such a high-level meeting despite the outstanding warrant, ensuring the proceedings would be conducted smoothly and without incident. The momentum for this proposed summit is building among world leaders. The initiative was set in motion by U.S. President Donald Trump, who announced on his Truth Social platform that he is actively arranging a trilateral meeting between himself, President Putin, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, though a specific location has not yet been finalized. This announcement was swiftly followed by an endorsement from French President Emmanuel Macron, who publicly suggested Geneva, Switzerland, as the ideal neutral ground to host the critical discussions. This flurry of diplomatic activity underscores a concerted push to create a forum for dialogue aimed at ending the conflict. Meanwhile, in a separate but related matter, the U.S. State Department found itself addressing an unusual incident involving Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Minister Lavrov claimed that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio complimented a sweatshirt he was wearing bearing the letters CCCP, the Cyrillic abbreviation for the Soviet Union, a garment widely interpreted as a symbolic nod to President Putin's foreign policy objectives. A State Department spokesperson downplayed the anecdote, refocusing attention on the administration's broader diplomatic efforts and expressing frustration that such minor incidents can distract from what they characterize as historic progress toward peace agreements. The drive for a resolution was further highlighted by the gathering of world leaders in Washington earlier in the week for a summit described as a potential watershed moment in efforts to conclude the largest ground war in Europe since World War II. President Trump hosted President Zelensky and other senior European officials in the Oval Office to concretely discuss the architecture of future security guarantees for Ukraine contingent upon a successful peace deal with Russia. The importance of this unified front was echoed by Ukrainian President Zelensky in a subsequent conversation with Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre, where both leaders affirmed that a historically united Europe is essential to achieving a reliable and lasting peace, with strong security guarantees being the fundamental key to that outcome. As the world now watches and waits, the arrangements for this extraordinary three-way summit represent a diplomatic gambit of the highest order. What is your thought about Trump versus European leaders? Let us know in the comments what you think of the whole situation, and if you want to stay on top of this, smash that like and subscribe button.